the Giga Coaster that started it all. Millennium Force opened in the year 2000 as the tallest, fastest continuous circuit roller coaster on the planet. Standing a staggering 310 feet, this ride was a staple for the new millennium, leading the way into a new era of roller coasters. Intamin Amusement Rides went all out with Millennium Force, attempting to build something that would be remembered throughout the ages. Even after 19 years of operation, Millennium Force is still considered to be one of the main attractions at Cedar Point. It's well regarded in the coaster community and also with the general public. Well, let's see how it holds up in my books. Presentation. There's something artistic with the way Intamin put together this roller coaster. The supports are very unique to look at, especially the giant first drop and first turnaround. The lighting package that is situated on the ride is also pretty impressive. It's simple but still elegant. The ride is themed to the new millennium, if you can theme something to that. It's supposed to be futuristic looking, but it's Cedar Point. I don't expect much theming, and this coaster needs very little. I love the music that is playing in the station. It's catchy and pulls you into the whole sci-fi futuristic atmosphere. What makes this roller coaster really stand out is how well it interacts with everything around it. Being situated right near the edge of the peninsula, Millennium Force offers some of the most amazing views in the park. As you are flying through the overbanked turns and around the midpoint of the ride, there's lots of neat things to look at. I love how the end of the ride just swoops right over the entrance and wraps around the queue. It really gets you pumped for the experience you are about to take. Overall, Millennium Force is very well presented, earning a score of 9. Ride intensity. With speeds of 93 miles per hour, you would automatically think that this roller coaster is going to be intense, and you'd be right to think that. The bottom of the first drop, rolling right into the giant overbanked turn, is the most intense moment on the ride. I'm known to gray out during this spot, but it doesn't always happen with every ride. The first giant hill, depending on where you are seated, can give you some float or airtime, but when comparing this to like Superman the Ride, Millennium Force falls flat in the airtime category. With that said, I don't think airtime was a primary factor when Intamin was creating this roller coaster. Millennium Force is all about the speed and overbanked turns. The ride manages to keep high speeds all the way through to the end. Sure, there are a couple pops of airtime scattered about, but not much to write home about. The first drop is probably the best moment of the ride. I love experiencing it in the back, that way you get some of that whip being pulled into the 300-foot, 80-degree drop. However, for the majority of this ride, Millennium Force is a front row experience. Since this coaster is all about the speed, you're going to want to get the full effect up in the front row. Now, when judging the overall intensity of this ride, it's a little tricky. The first section of Millennium Force is the most intense, but the ride does mellow out somewhat since the turns are rather drawn out. I think a score of 8 sounds fair. Fun factor. What makes Millennium Force so unique is how it has a little bit of everything. It's got speed, height, strong forces, a little airtime, head-chopping tunnels. I think there is something here for everyone to enjoy, which is why I believe Millennium Force has been able to remain so popular for as long as it has. Since I prefer airtime over positive G's, Millennium Force isn't one of my top 25 attractions, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate this coaster for what it is. I can't pass up a ride on this coaster whenever I'm at the point. The coaster is more of an experience than simply being pummeled with airtime or other strong forces. It's about the journey that it takes you through the park, and I'd argue that that journey is a good time. Millennium Force gets a score of 8 for the fun factor. Originality. Looking back to the year 2000, Millennium Force was basically in uncharted territories. No one else was building roller coasters like this, well, except for Morgan with Steel Dragon 2000, but I'd argue that these two roller coasters are still quite different. Millennium Force is technically the first Giga coaster, a term that I think was coined by Intamin. You can see the coaster model type printed on the floor of each coaster car. Millennium Force utilizes a cable lift, just another feature to pull this coaster into the new century. The lift alone was enough to make this roller coaster feel fresh and original. No more clickety-clacking of the rollback, just a swift, quiet motion being pulled to the top of the giant hill. The layout has its own custom pattern to it. I would say it's a combination between an out-and-back coaster and a spaghetti bowl layout. Overall, comparing Millennium Force with other roller coasters of its time, I'd say that it's very original, earning a 10 rating. Ride smoothness. Here's the toughest category to rank. Back when this roller coaster first opened, I would argue that Millennium Force was butter smooth. Well, when I visited the park in 2012, I thought the ride was starting to develop a rattle. My trip in 2016 erased my previous conception of a rough ride, and I thought the coaster was smoother than my previous trip. Well, fast forward to now, and I'd say that the ride has a slight rattle to it. Honestly, it's almost like riding in a car over a gravel road. It's nothing that would prevent me from riding again, just something that is noticeable. I mean, the coaster is almost 20 years old, so it's starting to show its age. I don't know if new trains would completely fix this issue, but again, it's not a huge complaint either. Like most coasters, just sit up near the front to experience a smoother ride. Millennium Force gets a score of 8 for ride smoothness. Okay, the final score comes to 8.6, which is a great score. Millennium Force is a roller coaster that every coaster enthusiast needs to experience at least once. The ride is very well known in and out of the coaster community. Personally, I would say that this coaster is more important historically than even Magnum XL 200. Both shattered significant records when they opened. But Millennium Force feels like it paved the way for a new era of thrill machines. My personal score is going to be an 8.5. I think this roller coaster is a great overall experience. Unfortunately, it doesn't offer as much airtime as I would prefer. If the quote-unquote airtime hills really had some good floater or even ejector airtime, then I'd say that this coaster would easily rank in my top 10. For what it is, I can't discredit Millennium Force. I mean, it's a roller coaster that stands 310 feet tall. Just accomplishing that feat is an achievement on its own. I have lots of respect for this roller coaster, and I feel like I have to pay homage to it every time I visit Cedar Point. Well, that's my review of Millennium Force. Let me know what you think of this legendary roller coaster in the comments below. Make sure to check out some of my other reviews. I'm starting to create a good collection of reviews for your enjoyment. As always, please subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content coming your way by XscreamThrills.